Okay, very big welcome to Denby Dale Amateur Radio Club, to our antenna roundtable. Tonight, I'm really pleased. We've got two people with different backgrounds and different experiences, but both with a love of antennas and building antennas. And that's Phil, G4UDU. So a big welcome to Phil, and Ken, G4VZV as well, both of whom have been active contributors in Denby Dale for quite a while now, and I know are both very active radio amateurs in their own right. Both of them operating from other countries frequently, operating portable and all kinds of locations, but I'll let them talk about that themselves. By way of introduction, I just wanted to say that I came into the hobby as a very young boy, when my dad got me interested in amateur radio. And when he decided that we were going to do something, my first project was to help him build a regenerative receiver for HF, which I did, valves, of course, in those days, and to put up an antenna. And of course, the first antenna we put up was a G4VZV. But I can tell you, and those of you who've been around in the hobby for 50 odd years like myself will know, there wasn't a shop you could go to like Martin Lynch or Waters and Stanton and buy yourself a G4VZV antenna. You had to make it all yourself, and we did. And it was a full-size G4VZV, and we made the twin feed ourselves. When I was talking to Gerald about it, he was talking about the original ones, which were made in wood and dipped in paraffin with holes drilled in them. Our one was made with some PTFE that my dad had brought home from the factory where he worked, and we cut that to the right lengths and drilled holes and fed the wire through that. And the feeder went straight to the shack, literally. So the twin feeder came from the middle of the antenna, and my dad, without asking permission from my mum, drilled two holes in the window and took the feeder straight through the window, where it was then taken into the back of the ATU that he had made, and then into the back of the radio. And that was my introduction, really, to building antennas. My next foray into antennas was building, again with my dad, a 20-metre quarter wave ground plane that was put on top of the house with four quarter wave radials coming down from it. And actually we managed to operate that very successfully on 15 and 10 metres. And what I took away from that as a very young boy, and that stayed with me throughout my entire life, is that first of all, making your own antenna is great fun. And I remember thoroughly enjoying it as a youngster, but I still thoroughly enjoy it today. And Ken and others who have sat down with me and chatted about coils we've wounded for the bottom of antennas or wires or different lengths and different feeders and different balance will know that once you pick up that fascination with antennas, then you're hooked. And one thing we can all say about radio is that we can go and buy ourselves the most fantastic bit of kit. Beautiful radios on sale nowadays. I mean, many of those I would say in the similar price bracket of radios like the IC 7300 and others, even the more modern ones. I mean, the quality of these radios is phenomenal. The receive quality is fantastic. The transmit quality is extremely good as well. But without an antenna, they're not going to do any good at all. So getting an antenna to actually push out those electromagnetic waves to other parts of the country and other parts of the world is something that, you know, what I find with aerials is, or antennas, is that I make one, I love it, and then I decide I want to change it and do something else. And so that bit of wire comes down and something else goes back up again. And I think anyone here who's been around in the hobby will experience the same delight of not following the golden rule. That is, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. With antennas, it's always looking for something which is going to improve it, make it better, operate differently, whatever the criteria are that you're looking for. But the one message before I hand over to Phil and to Ken, I just want to say really, is that the concept now of building yourself from scratch, a radio of the quality of the modern HF transceiver, is virtually impossible for any of us in this call here tonight. Yeah, I'm sure we've all got different degrees of skill, and we could build various radios, both from kit and from scratch as well. But it's impossible to build one of the size, the complexity, and with the features of these radios. But anyone can build an antenna. Anyone can get some wire or some aluminium tube and build themselves an antenna that can and will function fantastically well. In fact, you can even with wire build yourself a beam antenna for both HF and of course for VHF, where things are easier and more difficult at the same time. But I'll leave Ken and Phil to talk about that one. But that's all I want to say by way of introduction. And I know we've got one or two people who have returned to the hobby back with us tonight. And we've got people like Andy who discovered the hobby, really, didn't you, Andy, during the COVID lockdown, and sat your foundation license and then your intermediate license, and thoroughly, I can see, enjoying HF and VHF, and enjoying operating and enjoying discovering what you can do with different antennas and what's possible. And so the one single message that I want to put across to our viewers on YouTube and in the club here tonight, and for those watching this on video in the following days, is don't be scared of making something yourself. Don't be scared of trying something out and seeing what it does and seeing how it performs and what it looks like. And the worst you're probably going to do is, waste a little bit of cable and a bit of wire and a bit of time. But I guarantee to you, even if it doesn't work as well as you wanted it to, you'll have learned something in the process. So that's my kind of message that I want to give. So Phil, Ken, I'm going to hand over to Phil first, just to say a few words about yourself, and then Ken to follow through himself, and then we'll then go into a discussion about antennas and talk about and let Phil and Ken take any questions, any comments, any suggestions and ideas from people here tonight and on YouTube. So over to you, Phil.
Good evening, everyone. Yeah, basically, I mean, I've been doing this for an awful long time, but my antenna set up at home, I've got antennas for all bands. They're basically, the good thing about them is they're all tuned, they're all resonant, there's no tuners in line, and I can cover everything from top bands right the way through to 77s. I've got every single band covered, and I've actually got more than one antenna for each band. So I can cover DX working, local working, all sorts of things. And I've got to the point now, I can't get anything else in, or I cannot find any way to improve what I've got to get it any better than what I've got at home. But then, of course, I go out and about. So operating mobile, operating portable, in this country, yes, from the car, yes, from the motorhome. I also go touring with that all around Europe, and I also go flying around the world, visiting countries, and always the radio goes with me. So, yeah, it's quite a list. My inventory of portable deployable antennas, let's just say, is quite extensive. So if you're asking questions, I've probably done it. I've got one sitting here. Anyway, let's see what Ken's got.
Thanks. Can you hear me?
Here we go, Ken. Yep, 5 and 9.
Okay, thanks for that, Phil, and thanks, Nick. Okay, just a little introduction for anyone that doesn't know me. G4VZV, near Sheffield. Name is Ken. I've been around like Phil, probably 50 years or more now, since I was a teenager. I've done exactly as Nick has done. My father is G4NQL. He's 91 years of age next. We both got licensed together, but he did pass the Morse CW test a year or two before me, and that's due to my work commitments. But I got hooked on this hobby at the age of 14 or 15, something like that, and I've never looked back. I've got a lot of experience with antennas because I've built a lot from wide-spaced HF beams, homemade, also cubicle quads, delta loops, HF, VHF delta loops, 10 elements. I've made umpteen wire antennas and phased a couple of them. I've got a lot of experience in that field, but I think the most important thing I will say is read books and read the internet. There's a lot of stuff on there, varying examples, but you learn a lot from the internet and learn a lot from ON4UN's books, HF antennas for all locations. And I've read and read and read, sometimes books, I've read them more than once. So I've got a lot of experience with antennas in what I class as a limited space. That is 60 foot by 60 foot garden. And that's it really. So with that, I can go further into what I've got experience with, and that's operating by the sea. But I'll come to that later, and I'll pass it back to Nick, and then you forward the meeting. And if anyone wants to talk and ask me any questions, I'll give you my experience. Back to you, Nick.
Okay, thank you very much, Ken, and thank you, Phil, for just introducing yourself. Right, over to the audience here. Who would like to ask the first question or make the first contribution to the meeting tonight, and we'll let Phil and Ken respond. So who wants to go first? If you unmute, and you're a very well-behaved group, just unmute and introduce yourself, go straight off. Who's first? Yeah, go on, Roger.
Well, I've got something that I thought I would it was more of a question I could ask. There was a conversation some weeks ago regarding very, very cheap, and I've lost where it is now. Oh, it's down here. There we go. Very, very cheap telescopic whips available on the internet for a few quid, like that. And that's a 5.6 meter whip. And I thought, what we're going to do with that? I thought it were about a tenner or something delivered for two of them, 12 quid. It's nothing. And yet, I know it's not really rated for outdoor use, but permanently outdoor, I mean. But I thought I'd give it a go because it's quite light, but nice and strong and obviously portable. And so I've been tinkering about with a design that I would make. And I would be interested in your comments before I actually construct it. Would that be a good idea to share a drawing that I've done so far?
Please, Roger, do, yeah.
Right. Let me get the settings straight. Share. Where's the share? Oh, there it is. Let's see if it's going to share. And I'm going to share that one first. Okay, so that is my little sketch drawing. You can see at the top there, I've got the telescopic whip sticking out the top. I've got a bit of metal plate for it to fasten into, because unusually, this is an M10 bolt on the end, sorry, an M10 thread on the end, not an M8 or a 3/8 or anything. It's an M10. But I can get an M10 where can you see my mouse? Just hovering there.
Yeah, we can see it. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. That's where there's an M10 thread underneath. You can screw it straight in. So the top bit there's metal, and then I've got some plastic sides, and I've got another metal base, and you can see the idea here. 80 meters, 40 meters, 20, 15 and 10 direct into the whip, and just build a coil underneath. And what I thought of, that's a plan view. So it'll be a square thing with some spikes. So those verticals are actually spiky corners. You can just stand on it in a field and literally stamp it into the grass. And if not, we'll have to have a bit of guy rope. The holes around the outside are to fasten some some, earth leads, earth wires, counterpoises, whatever you want to call them. That is the sort of base, the detail construction. And I would just stick underneath there, I would stick an SO239 and the cable fed from underneath. The screws are just to show which direction it's been bolted so I can show it bolts together. So I've got a 3-position switch. So you can see I just short the coil out for 20, 15 and 10 and adjust the length. 80 meters, the whole coil's in. 40 meters, just a small bit of coil. The figures there are approximately, or based on online calculations. I would obviously need to adjust that when I built it. But I have the means to build that. And the idea being portable more than anything and goes in your car and quite simple. So, Ken, I know it's no tuner involved. It's straight in, that's it. Does what it says on the tin. What do you think?
Okay, right. Where are you wanting to put this antenna? In your garden or portable? On top of your house? On top of a garage?
No, I'm thinking it'll be just temporary. So it'll either go in the back of the car and go out and about portable. It's portable use. But the thing about it is it could work on rocky ground as well as soft ground. That's the thing I was thinking of. You put some radials out and it could work on rocky ground. And maybe have to guide it. The reason I made it a metal is to give it a bit of heft, so it'll stand a little bit of wind.
Okay, yeah. Well, I know these 5.8 meter whips. I've had 3 of them, and I think I've got 4 actually. I use them on the trolley. They are on my homemade trolley station, but that's a different ball game because that's near water, near salt water. You're not going to do it near salt water unless you go to the coast, I imagine. So. Yes. You're trying to make a vertical antenna with radials. The first thing I'll say is that's a good idea what you're doing. You're going to put a coil near the base, which is not the best place to put the coil. You're better placing it higher up the vertical and putting another tube below. Absolutely, that one. Now, efficiency, I noticed you've got 80 meters included in there. Efficiency and bandwidth on 80 is going to be absolutely down to a few kcs, maybe only 5 or 6 or 7. You're not going to get much efficiency, but you're going to get exceptionally narrow bandwidth. You'll be better on 40, you'll be better on 20, and you'll be even better on 10. In fact, you shouldn't really use it on 10. I would discard the coil and take it off and only use the coil for 40 and 80. Yes, an excellent idea. I went out on top of a hill with Nick and with M0 Alpha India Alpha, and we put exactly this type of antenna up without the coil and with 7 watts from a little RS918 transceiver, 7 watts with its internal battery. We worked into Russia, worked all over Europe. Excellent. And it's a fun type of aerial for a fun type of day out in the countryside. When it comes to the home station, that's a bit of a different ball game. Unless you're prepared to drop your vertical telescopic whip, which would survive quite well because it's stainless steel. So you could keep that outside and probably put a sleeve of plastic over it, a little bit like you would with a rotary washing pole, you know, the plastic sleeves that go over, so that it doesn't get weathered too much. So that's my thoughts on that. I don't think you'll find it'll be difficult to tune. I think it's going to be a bit of trial and error. But with that, I think it's an excellent idea. Air-spaced coil, super. And if you want to make it even better, just attach a clip to it and just clip and move it up and down, a little bit like that one, which is similar, air-spaced and as a clip. So that there you can just move this clip up and down to suit whichever part of a band you want. And that's an MFJ one, but that's quite rated at a high power level. And there's the M1ECC, I think it's M1ECC coils, which will do exactly the same, but won't cover 80 meters, only to 40.
Yeah.
You
over
can.
to Phil. Well,
Yeah.
I was just about to pass it over to Phil
Yeah.
and let Phil put his bit in there about
Yeah.
what he thinks.
See, what you can do is you can actually optimize it and actually make it a bit more efficient. If you take the length of the coil and the whip and you actually resonate it, for this you want something like a GDO to do it, grid dip oscillator, you can then connect the bottom end of the coil to ground and you actually feed it at 50 ohms up from the bottom. So now you'll be feeding it 1 or 2 turns up from the bottom. So you get to the 50 ohm point, because if you think of the whole thing, at the bottom it's 0, at the top it's lots and lots of ohms, many K. And if you pick the 50 ohm point, which would be about 1 or 2 turns up, you can actually get more current into the coil. And that will make better use of the fact of a low coil, or as Ken says, it's better to put them up in the air. And in fact, if you look at the Hustler range of mobile antennas, all of the Hustler mobiles have got mid-whip length coils. And they did that for good reason, so as to shift the current up the actual radiating part of the antenna. But actually feeding it from the bottom at a tap point will work. And I had one of these many, many, many years ago with a military sectional whip on top of it, which was about 5 meters or so, with a coil in a box, tap points, exactly the same thing. And I had that. And let's just mute that clock.
Is that me?
Always comes through when I want it to. Right, there we go. So, yeah, so I had that many years ago. It worked very well. But grounded verticals with good ground are fantastic. But it's hard to get good ground when you're out and about, especially if you're up on the Pennines or something like that, where it's all rocky. And in fact, sometimes it's an advantage. And of course, that's where, if you go into verticals, if you have end-fed half waves, because end-fed half waves negate the problem of grounding because you just simply don't need it.
Yeah, I take all your points regarding the raising of the coil up. I get that. That's more of a construction thing. You're adding to the length of the overall assembly now, because I've got that. And if I want to stick a coil there and then it's getting more complicated. And my idea was just to use this and just be able to try this, because that I can carry. I'm not talking about carrying it up a hill, but up in a field. Yes, there's another option.
But never forget, if I can find it down here somewhere. Never forget the walking pole, because the walking pole is a wonderful thing to act as the bottom section guide. Let's put this one down. This is your normal walking pole, but this has actually got a 3/8 thread on the top, which is actually the same as the standard, which is 3/8 Whitworth, which is the standard camera mount. But as a mounting plate, you can put on the top of this and then use this guide 3 ways to give an elevated point to put your coil and your whip up from it. So you're going to gain 4 or 5 feet in height, and you'll be surprised how much difference that will make just by pulling that coil up off the ground. But these things are wonderful. And I take these out, one of these out, and put all sorts of antennas on the top. In fact, that's the reason I take them traveling, because they don't like you carrying aluminium poles on aeroplanes. They get a bit funny about that. So I take one of these. But yeah, they're great things, and it's a good way of getting the thing raised up easily and get some more height under the bottom of it.
I think that's an excellent idea for the Mark II version, I think. I might try it, because the first thing is to get the coil made and, as you say, tuned and everything.
Yeah.
I wasn't thinking of tuning the coil, Ken, so much as having the width fully up and getting it near enough, and then using the actual adjustability built in, because you can just pull it up and down a little bit. So that'll be on the day-to-day tuning. You just, adjust the length of the whip a foot or two either way. for
Yeah,
each end
my
of the
only
band.
my thoughts there though, Phil, was don't introduce inductance to your antenna. You don't need it if you're only going to work 10,
That's right.
12, 15,
Absolutely.
17 and 20.
Yeah, in fact, once you, with that 15, what's you got 15, 16 feet, I mean, once you go above 20 meters, you actually want capacitance in series with it, not inductance. So actually on 10 meters or something like that, or say 17, it's going to end up like about a 3/8 wave, and you can tune it with variable C and not have inductance in the bottom at all.
And
Yeah.
one thing that you mentioned, Phil, as an alternative, I know you're mentioning about this stainless steel whip, but if you get 67 foot of wire and you make yourself a 49-to-1 transformer,
Yeah.
you've effectively got yourself a 4-band antenna before you even, without any
Yeah.
measuring.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah.
That's a
and
different
I think
antenna, though. That's
yeah.
I'm trying to use. What can I use that for? That was my thinking. I can make a wire
Yeah.
antenna. Yeah, we've done wire antennas, but these are just an interesting little exercise, and I was just interested to know what I could do with it.
Yeah,
Apart from also what Nick's got.
yeah, I started to play with this, and that is using two of those 5.6 meter poles, and then running a wire across the top. So I'm making a delta loop. I'm making the similar delta loop that Ken's now using at home, which is the delta loop has a twin feed that comes from the wire at the top, drops straight down into your balun at the bottom here, and then you run your coax up to that. So that's something I was looking, Roger, at playing with when we go up to Farnley Tice when the weather improves, to try something like this. And what I'm particularly interested in is different heights for the base of the delta loop. So I'm interested to know how well it would operate just a couple of feet off the ground. So if I look at what I've got on at the moment, is literally about a meter of a tube on here, a solid polystyrene tube. But I'd be interested to know if we stuck it at the top of the mast, what the difference is in operation and received strength from using a delta loop at, say, 10 meters off the ground and using it a meter off the ground, and comparing the two and seeing how well they operate as two different types of antenna. But Ken, you and I have been talking about this for a few days, haven't we?
Yeah, I think you've got a lot of scope, Phil, with that whip antenna, but you can use it on its own. Soltero, as I say, singular. Just work it on its own and put a few radials sloping, and try and slope them down at 45 degrees. You'll get 50 ohm impedance almost guaranteed by doing that.
Yeah. Yeah, because the other thing with your loop, full wave loop side, all quads and delta loops inherently work better, work okay, reasonably close to ground. It's amazing how well they work, because they're also lower Q as well, unlike because it's a full wave loop. But one thing also I always think about, which is forgotten, is, okay, we all call in this amateur radio and what we do, but what is your purpose of what you want to do? So do you want to go out portable and work rare DX? Or do you want to go out portable and work all your fellow people in the country, from your SOTA, your POTA, your whatever, fields and fauna, your castles or whatever? Because it's different things altogether. And going out, setting up a vertical over a beach gives you, on salt water, gives you a fantastic low angle radiator, but actually it's not that good for NVIS, for local close working. So you really got to think what you want to do. And, one antenna for one thing is not the best antenna for all things. I mean, I had a classic example yesterday evening. I was sitting there on 40, and there was a Papa Yankee Brazilian station calling on 40 meters SSB, the Europeans were all struggling to work in because they were probably running normal, not big beam antennas, but regular antennas. And here at home, I've got a 40-meter full-size vertical. I've also got my 40-meter UK and Europe antenna, which is an end-fed half wave, fed from 8 feet up to 25 and back down again. So it's an inverted V, but fed as an end-fed. And that is brilliant for local intra-UK and intra-Europe. Now, all I did was I went put the switch to the 40-meter vertical. All these stations have been calling from Europe. Call, 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 call. I don't think he had a particularly good noise situation down in Brazil because he wasn't hearing things. Bang, first call on the 40-meter vertical, I worked in one call. I thought, that's all too easy. But that was a classic case of a well-designed, properly tuned vertical was outperforming on low angle what high angle radiators were doing with wires and things like that. And just one quick thing I'll add, Nick, just you were saying about good old Louis. In the latter days of Louis's life, because of course he lived up the road from here, I used to go around and help him with his antennas. And yet, much as everyone thought G4VZVs come in plastic bags with a piece of tune feeder and a piece of coax on the end, no, they don't. They have open wire feeder and they come back into the house. And he had, I think he certainly had two, he often had three. He had a double-sized 5RV, which was 204 foot long. He had a standard-sized G5RV, which was 102 foot long, and he had a half-size 5RV. But they were all fed with open wire feeder, and they came back inside to his, what he termed an ASTU, which was an antenna system tuning unit. And they were Louis's words for it. Great guy, and I'm really pleased that I can actually say I went round and helped him in his latter years. But yeah, he lived only about 10, 15 miles from here.
Right, brilliant. Gerald.
Yeah, that's right. Louis Varney talked at Denbydale Club many years ago, and he pointed that out very clearly, that it was the antenna system that mattered. And he called it the ASTU, Phil, exactly as he said.
Yeah, that's right.
If I might just refer back to something else earlier, when I first made my own mobile antenna for 160 meters, and I had the bottom part of it to raise it up, and the current portion, I used does anybody remember the door chimes that used to go ding dong with two long tubes? Anybody remember those?
Yeah.
If you do, I got the bits of one of those, so I used the dong, the biggest one, as the base part to get the current portion high up. And then the inductors are a similar thing to what Roger's going to use for his 80-meter bit on top, and then a whip on top of that. And I found out the whip on top, you've got to get it exactly right for tuning. But if you put something extra at the bottom, sometime when I've parked up and not mobile, I used to add a bit extra to between the dong and the roof of the car, right? Found a 4'6", made very little difference to the tuning. It was almost exactly the same, adding it into the current portion. And sometimes I put an extra one in, so I'd have about 9 foot up before this width on top of it. I got as high as 20 foot when it became a little bit unstable, but as long as there was no wind. And that's when I worked back to Huddersfield on top band, using the mobile whip, put back on when I was parked at the side of the road. So you can have lots more, as much length as you need at the bottom of the whip, below the coil, without affecting the tuning. So once you've got the tuning right for the top bit, it's very good. Over to you, Nick.
I've actually got a big tar heel antenna, which I take out mobile sometimes. Mm-hmm. It's one of the really big screwdriver ones with the big heavy coil and the big section at the bottom, to which I've got a whip extension goes on top of that. And there's a capacitance hat goes in the middle of that. And there's a 6-foot whip on the top. Problem is it ends up 16 feet high, but it tunes top band absolutely beautifully. It's wonderful on top. And of course, because it's a screwdriver antenna, I can just sit inside and just tune it to any part of the band I like. But you're not going to be going along the road with 16 foot of antenna on top of the roof.
It does wobble a lot if you try, Phil. I tried it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just kind of, before I call anyone else, just going back to Roger, I mean, I think the answer is with those is to play. And and see what you can achieve with it, really. And Ken's quite right. That's exactly what Paul used that day we went up Freehold Top in West Yorkshire, and it was a SOTA summit, Roger. So we were a reasonable height, but it's not one of the bigger hilltops, just a few miles up from where I live here, and it worked very well. We just low power. But then we've got in the room here tonight. I'm going to probably embarrass Mike and Adriana because they're always out working portable with very, very simple antennas and low power. But I posted it onto our YouTube channel, and it's already received a lot of views. But both Mike and Paul, on the same day as it happens, went out operating portable, and Mike was out, I think, with your KX2 or KX3. Mike, you tell the story and just describe KX2. Go on, Mike. Just tell us about how you got on and what you were doing.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, we were out of the city on a dike near a river, and the ground was very wet because of the recent rainfalls, and the groundwater was still at a very high level. So that gave us quite a boost, I think, even if it was no salt water, but sweet water there, normal river water. And we had the KX2 with 10 watts SSB and a very cheap antenna, a telescopic antenna, only about, I think, 1.8 meters long, something like that, and with a coil at the bottom, which we bought at the ham radio thing there at Friedrichshafen last year, and which was manufactured by the Chinese factory called Ham King. So it's not actually high class, but it was working. I measured it before trying it out, and I had to tune it, of course, because the resonant frequency just lay outside the 12-meter band, but it could be tuned and gave me quite good results. We worked a station in the Caribbean with it, St. Eustatius, PJ5/SP9FIH, I think. And later on, Papa Victor 8 Alpha Lima from northwestern Brazil, a very strong station. And he has got tremendous big antennas there. I saw it on his QRZ.com page. But nevertheless, he gave us a 5 and 5. I was very astonished about that. But with very few, sparse effort there, sometimes if you are at the right time, at the right place, you can really achieve something. And this was the case, obviously, on Saturday.
I will agree. I listened to the video, Mike. It was excellent. You were in the right place at the right time with real good propagation, and it worked. Fantastic. Whether you can repeat that day after day, I don't think you will, because I think it's down to propagation, and I'm not going to pull it down. I mean, it was a fantastic contact, fantastic achievement, when a lot of us, and I'm open to I do use 400 watts when I go on, be it 40 meters, 20 meters. So yeah, fantastic on such low power.
Yeah, thank you, Ken. I absolutely agree. This can't be repeated, I think, or not so quickly anyway. But you always have to give it a try. And sometimes you are succeeding, sometimes not. Mostly you will not succeed, I'm afraid. But nevertheless, the time when it gets a result, as last Saturday, in my case, in our case here, then it's something to remember by and to give you the right strength behind it to go on trying in the future.
there is one way you could improve it and almost guarantee success. And I know you're a long way from the salt water, but when you do eventually, when the weather warms up and you go out for the day to the coast or something, attach a counterpoise wire, even if you have to just clip it to the base of your PL259 or whatever it is that you screw into. In effect, creating a bit of a ground plane. And of course, if you're near the water, maybe within 1 or 2 wavelengths of the water, wow, it'll open up to something that you never imagined. It's just so good. Phil knows, Phil's done it, I've done it. Yeah.
Absolutely. Actually, we've had one of these experiences, I think 2 or 3 years back. I think it must be 2 years back. We were at the seaside, and it was the warmest section of the year. So I literally had my feet in the salt water, HI, and had the KX2 with me, and a small counterpoise or radial clipped onto the KX2. It's got a metal case, and we actually made several contacts into the east coast of the US with that, and that was really tremendous. So the saltwater is always a great booster of the signal, and if one can reach the seaside, it should always be tried. And the next time I go out here in the land inside, so to speak, we will take counterpoise with us anyway and try this out. We'll perhaps better the signal we've had. But of course, it's not salt water, but it's better than nothing, I think.
Yeah, and of course, any people that go out with a handheld radio walking in the hills on 2 meters, just a little counterpoise to the bottom of that antenna on your little handy mobile portable VHF transceiver will make all the difference. It will raise your received signal strength by, probably 3, 4, 5 dB. It is fantastically successful. I agree with Ken. In fact, Anycraft make a version of that much more expensive than your Ham King one, Mike, don't they? The AX1 antenna, similar design. They do one which is a 2-band antenna for 20 meters and 17 with a small coil and a switch in the bottom. And then you can plug in another coil to give you 40 meters as well with the whip on top. But they also recommend 2 separate counterpoises. I think, if I remember rightly, one is 3 meters long and the other is 10 meters long. I might have got that wrong, but
no, that's correct.
I think that's what they suggest. Yeah.
The other one, of course, is like the buddy stick, which is what my carry around the world one. And as for taking that somewhere wet and watery, can I share the screen here?
Of course you can. Yeah.
How am I going to do that? Oh, there we go. Share screen. I'm going to do that. And if I can get that one. Right, now, can I get that so I can see it? Now, can you see a tripod there?
No,
you're not seeing that? It should be sharing. Share, hang on, share that. Right. So you've got a tripod there. Have you out on the sand? Good. This is down in Tenerife, EA8. When I go down there, I take down, as you can see, the proximity of salt water is close, to say the least. I'm playing games with the tide out there, and I take this down, set the tripod out. I'm actually out on the breakwater in the sea. So the shoreline is back there in the distance, and I'm out 200 meters or so into the sea. So as a consequence, this is when I used to take the KX3 out. And interesting thing, there's the battery pack I take, because that's nickel metal hydride. And you can take that on a plane without getting into the nasty lithium problems and get it onto a plane easily. But there's the buddy stick with its adjustable coil, of course, which is elevated above ground. You don't have to worry much about the grounding, because the water comes up quite quickly, and it's just a case of keeping your feet dry, basically, because it is very much in the sea. So it's a very wet takeoff from there, and I'm actually out in the sea by about a couple of 100 meters. But I tell you, you can do no wrong. You can just do no wrong. As Ken was saying, the signals are phenomenal. It's just amazing. And take that same setup back onto the island and go 2 or 3 miles inland on volcanic rock, and it's rubbish. Bring it down here. It's just amazing. But I'll be back with this at the end of March. So I will be EA8 portable with that set up at the end of March. And yeah, that's what I'll be playing with. But that, just like Ken says, you can't beat a bit of the wet, salty stuff for getting good signals. And that's worth an amplifier. That's probably almost worth Ken's 400-watt amplifier that is going out there.
Well, I call it God's amplifier. So, yeah, can I just mention something here, because there must be one or two here wondering why salt water is better than fresh water. And I'm going to give you the answer, which is I mean, I knew this, but I've had it explained to me by a scientist who came up to me on my last visit in October when I was by the salt lagoons. He was a German scientist, but he was working in Valencia University. And he was amazed and took pictures to put into the Valencian University magazine. Right, it's all about the conductivity of the water. If you're near fresh water, there are very few charged particles, because salt water is made up of salt. It's made up of chloride, calcium, potassium. It's actually made up of sodium chloride, and the scientist told me up to 87% of salt water is sodium chloride, which is altogether almost a perfect conductor for your signal. And bearing in mind, if you're next to the salt water, the sea, which goes out for many miles, or you're next to the salt lagoons, which go out for a few miles, your signal doesn't just hit the water at one angle, it hits it at many angles over a great distance, and usually some wavelengths. And that is the difference between going next to the River Don that's got nothing in it, or going next to the local reservoir with no charged particles and going next to the sea. And like Phil said, it's God's amplifier is giving you 3 kilowatts for driving to the saltwater, putting your vertical antenna up, quarter wave. Please make sure it's a quarter wave. And well, then the rest is just, well, it's phenomenal, as Phil said. So I've just given you a quick explanation as to why it works. Brackish water, which is a mixture of salt water and fresh water, like the River Humber, that will work, but again, not as good as the salt water. And I don't think I can really explain any more unless Phil's got anything to add on it. What, I don't know, anything to add to it, Phil?
Well, I mean, I am very blessed by location, not for VHF, but for HF, because I live less than a wavelength on 160 from a tidal river. So I've got salt water runs up beside me, but I work stuff on top band that people just think, you know, you can't do. And the classic one was the Clipperton DXpedition that was on about a couple of 3 weeks ago. And, you know, people saying about that. And I worked it on the last time round, and you know, I've got the card for Clipperton. So there's a card for Clipperton. I've actually worked it on top band. And there's not many people in the UK who've worked Clipperton Island out in the Pacific on top band. And I've done it from here on CW, and didn't need FT8 or anything like that. Yeah, done on CW, but that's down to the fact that the ground conductivity is absolutely superb. And I run an inverted L on 160, which is, you know, a fair old chunk of vertical. And yeah, it works.
Has anybody tried it on a hard water area to see if the chemicals in that work as well? Or even in somewhere there's iron ore deposits?
I have a quick answer to that. Nick might be able to explain from his previous address.
Indeed. Where I lived when I was in Penistone, Gerald, as you know, was on the ground of what used to be, in the Victorian era, the English steelworks that then became the David Brown factory during the Second World War, manufacturing the bits for aeroplanes, Spitfire engine mounts and so on. There is, if you dig down in the ground there is a shed load of iron in the ground, lots and lots of iron. And I found, when I put up a very simple quarter wave antenna, Ken will remember coming round to the house, and I'd literally just run a wire up a small tree in the back garden. And yes, I'd put down a few radials, but I thought, this is working amazingly well. It then occurred to me that I was getting the benefit of a fantastic ground system, which was not visible. There's a slightly different story to this, and that is that when they were building the houses, because it was a very small new housing development, and they were digging up the factory and knocking it down and digging up to lay the groundworks, they discovered 2 unexploded Second World War bombs in the ground there. So I think all of the residents there were all very anxious when they were digging holes in their back garden as to what they might uncover. But no, undoubtedly, Gerald, that does make a difference. And I just shared on the screen, Ken, this was your little note, wasn't it, about the benefits of operating from the sea and why it works so well.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I think you've covered it there. It's down to the ground that you're above. If you've got a high water table, you're near the sea. Always try to get close to the salt water.
I think the clue, Ken, is in the word ground plane, isn't it?
Yeah. And if anyone doesn't know, read up about the Fresnel, Fresnel, Fresnel zone. It explains it all. I don't want to hog it on here about the Fresnel zone, but really have a read of that. You'll learn a lot.
Okay, thank you, Ken. Phil. Right, anyone else with a question or comment or just while people are thinking, just on YouTube, Danny 2E0HKX brackets 1 watt QRP. Well done, Danny. Has just popped up. Enjoying watching you on YouTube this evening. And he says, Ken, he was talking to you earlier today, I think. You were on 40 meters, weren't you?
Yeah.
One other use for the beach that I use, I mean, it's no good if you've got those beautiful sandy beaches. This is just absolutely, just forget it. But if you're ever walking along a stony beach, what I pick up and I carry around, what's termed as hagstones. You heard the terminology? The stones with the beautiful holes through the middle. Mm. They make the most fantastic throwing weights to put in lines over trees ever, because they cost nothing. They come out the sea. I mean, I've always got some around here. I mean, there's a hag. That's a small hagstone. Got the hole through the middle. There we go. But of course, the hole's lovely and smooth. So it's perfect for putting throwing lines through. And I just pick these up off the beach. And if I'm operating portable and I just want a line to throw over a tree branch, I use these things. Don't go buying fishing weights, because these are nice and smooth. But you can find them on all the beaches around the UK where there's a stone beach. Yeah, they're called hagstones, supposed to bring you good luck. So there you go. You work lots of DX with a hagstone.
I was talking to one of our members, Phil, just recently about how he got a wire over a tree. And of course, his problem is that his cows buy to him. So it's not easy to chuck a stone into a tree that is just on the edge of your own property and near to someone else's. That's the problem. We need those lovely things. We can't buy them in this country.
Chris has been trying to get in.
Yeah, go on. Sorry, Gerald. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, Chris has been trying to get in, I think, a G8 AGM. What?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, yeah, go on, Chris. Yeah, go on.
Okay, I just wanted to add to the salt water points. I did something a few years back. I can't remember exactly how many years back, probably about 6. And you'll find this on my QRZ page. I found a very interesting location. It's called Packing Shed Island. It's down in Essex on the coast in an estuary. And there is, for want of a better word, it's a thing that looks like a scout hut. It was, in fact, a packing shed when there used to be an oyster business around there. But what's interesting about it is you can rent this shed, and the people who manage it will take you out to it on a boat. And I went at a spring tide because I thought it'd be much more fun then, because that's when you get the highest tides, of course. And the whole island is underwater apart from the shed at high tide. And the water was about 3 inches below the floor of the shed at its highest point. And of course, you can mount verticals on a little balustrade thing on the entrance to the shed. And it was absolutely superb. You had to sort of retune now and then, because actually I think I'm right in saying that at the spring tide, there was a 6-meter tide, roughly. So tuning would go off occasionally. But surrounded by salt water on the edge of the UK was, I felt, just about the best you could do at ground level, all right, sea level. It gave extraordinary results. I was very, very happy. I hadn't put a lot of effort into the verticals I was using, but then you could argue how much effort you need for a vertical. A fishing rod with a bit of wire up the side, and a bit of thought about how to connect to the sea. Some wags suggested crocodile clips. It was just a case of making the most of what was there.
Yeah.
But
if you,
it was all a kind of compromise as far as I was concerned. But my God, it didn't matter. It was fantastic performance, and if anybody wants to go the extra mile to work over salt water, that's a very good way of doing it.
Yeah, if you go and look at the commercial aspect of the BBC World Service, the Alford Ness BBC World Service station was the 648 kilohertz station, and that over had, I think it's at 5 phase verticals, all beaming on a 135-degree steering angle, which basically puts the BBC World Service down into Eastern Europe. And of course, now one of those antennas is being used as the radiating antenna on 648 kilohertz for Radio Caroline. And that's the reason it works well, because it's right over the sea. I mean, those antennas are on wet ground right by the sea at Alford Ness, looking over the North Sea.
Yeah, it certainly works.
What I would say is, if you live within 10 miles or 15 miles of the sea, and you're in one of those type of housing estates where you can't really put up many antennas, wires, beams, towers, don't bother. Get yourself a sack trolley and build your little station on the sack trolley with 80 watts. 80 watts is all you need, running the transceiver without an amplifier. I say that, but I have a small amplifier on my trolley, which will give me about 150 watts if I want. And goodness me, you'll go on the band and you will have pile-ups, as Nick knows, as nearly everyone on Denby Dale Radio Club knows. I've got, if you go onto my webpage and click on the link about maybe just 2 or 3 lines down, you can listen to me working KH6, KH0, Hotel 44. They're all there, and they're all 5.9 plus. But we're talking about saltwater, and that's just one thing. I mean, a lot of us don't live near the sea. I would imagine the majority of us don't. Phil's very lucky. So, and I only picked this idea up and thought, goodness me, I'm going to make use of the salt water whilst I'm down in Alicante, and I'm going to make use of it whilst I'm by the salt lagoons. So that's all I did, and it cost me no more than £50 to buy the trolley and to put it together. But probably, and I might be right, might be wrong here, but you may think, right, well, we're not near salt water. What else can we do when we're not near salt water? Back to you, Nick.
Yeah, I was going to say to Chris, that hut you were talking about is on Mersey Island in Essex, and I've just posted a picture of. I lived down in Essex for 15, 20 years, and that's at a place called Two Tree Island, and that's the car park at the edge of the island. It's actually, they call it an island. It's reclaimed land from a tip where London's waste was dumped, was taken down the river on barges, and they dumped it in this location, a little spit near to Leigh-on-Sea, just before you get to Southend. And anyway, when they stopped dumping on it, they let it grow wild again. It's now a fantastic wildlife and walking spot. But also, we discovered in my radio club down there, it was a fantastic place to go portable. And I think there's just a picture of one of the days operating from there, where we had about 15 or 20 people all waiting for the tide to come in. Literally, those poles that are sitting there, you can see just next to where I'm operating from and further down, literally are just a foot away from the sea when it comes in. And, you know, just as Ken has reported, you know, the impact, and Phil made the point, this is the same as switching on a 400 watt amplifier. No doubt of it whatsoever. You know, you're operating away on whatever power you're using, QRP, 10 watts, 50 watts, whatever it may be. The sea comes in and you've got a vertical antenna, DX antenna, or indeed any antenna next to that sea, and your signal just shoots up, and suddenly you're working that DX you didn't think you could do.
Yeah.
I mean, Ken, I know you go on about it all the time, but you can't really stop marveling about how incredible the difference is.
You're making me feel, sorry, so you're making me feel quite guilty about the fact that I actually had a 400 watt amplifier in that shed as well as the 400 watt C.
Yeah, I agree, and I agree with what you've said, Nick. Yes, if you're near the sea, if you're near saltwater, phenomenal. It's just that, like, we are in the centre of the UK, and I think probably the majority of members of Denby Dale who are listening and watching now are probably 70, 80 miles away from the sea. It's a long way to drive just for an hour or two.
4.5 miles here, Ken.
You're a lucky man.
4.5 miles from the English Channel.
Yes, but having said that, I mean, I know you're still in a good location, but you're not in the Fresnel zone.
No.
Now, if you want to get really good at this 160 meter, well, 160 meters is different. But if you want to go to 20, 40, then get within the Fresnel zone. You need to be within 200 or 300 yards of the sea, don't you?
You see, Peter Dodd, when he was alive, G4UDU, wrote all the antenna books. Everyone's probably seen one of his books. Peter Dodd lived just about a quarter of a mile from the sea. And that's why he got involved in doing the LF stuff, because down on 138 kilohertz, which is the 2,200 meter band, he was within a wavelength of the sea. And he always said that, you know, when you start looking at real LF and you start looking at the length of a wavelength and where he was, he said, I'm literally in so close to the sea, it counts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here's two call signs for anyone that wants to look up. Golf 4 Alpha India Romeo. His name is David. If you have a look at his QTH on QRZ, he's actually overlooking the sea, and it's down below him. And look at Oscar Zulu 8, B Bravo V Victor. OZ8 Baker Victoria, as he comes out on 40 meters. He's got his vertical antennas in the sea, and only quarter waves, so he can use the sea as the ground plane.
Yeah, this is Dave's location, isn't it, Ken?
Yep, that's it.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that's just spectacular, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Absolutely.
We're all jealous of the tower and the antenna, of course, apart from the location. So going back to your point, Chris, he's almost certainly running 400 watts and that fantastic beam and that fantastic location.
I've often wondered if you get the same benefit of the sea from a horizontal beam as you do from a vertical.
Good question.
You tend to see now, certainly D-expeditions have a lot of them. I mean, yes, it's the problems of holding all the kit with them, but a lot of them go for single and phase verticals now because it's easier to run phase verticals and set them up than the old school, which they used to do 20, 30, 40 years ago. They always used to take sectional towers and beams on D-expeditions to rare islands. But now everything of late has been verticals because they've, you know, it's been well understood that you run single or phase verticals at the water's edge and you've got all the advantages.
But VCAs are very popular, I think, aren't they, with D-expeditions now? They've discovered they're very efficient and, of course, easy to transport.
Indeed, but also you'll find as well on the other people still using horizontal antennas are people putting up portable hex beams, but they're putting them up very low indeed. I mean, they're running them from mast, which is just 10, 15 foot high next to the sea. So I think that is making a big difference to the way they're operating vis-a-vis the sea and the Fresnel zone that Ken's talking about.
Yeah, and remember, with the beam antenna, obviously you've got your gain. You're not putting out a low angle radiation. You're not putting out a low angle signal as much as you are with a quarter wave. You've got gain on horizontal polarization, but you're not using the ground plane of the sea as much. And that's why even the big DXs, well, that's a great example of why OZ8 BV, Bravo Victor, has put quarter waves on the edge of the sea. Well, it's not on the edge, it's actually in the sea by a few meters. Yeah, I mean, tremendous signal. I was on with him the other night on 40 meters, and he's just a tremendous signal, something I just cannot replicate here. The only thing I can do here, being 870 miles inland, is to create my own ground plane, which is not as effective by any means. It's just elevated radials, which is what I said to you, Phil. If you could put radials from your stainless steel whip and angle them at 45 degrees, yeah.
Yeah, well, it's the standard thing. You know, a dipole's 72, a quarter wave is half of that, 36. But if you actually take that radials out, it goes from 36 slowly up through 50 till it becomes 72. So, yeah, you put them like that and you've got 50 ohms.
That's it. Yeah.
Okay, anyone else with a question, comment,
I'd like to add just one thing about working QRP by the sea.
Yeah.
I can warmly recommend the YouTube channel of Victor Kilo 3 Yankee Echo, Peter Parker. He's quite an illustrious person, but he's got a very good YouTube channel with lots of films or videos about his QRP actions there from the side of the sea. He's very he's doing a very good job there with only 5 watts from an FT817 and the vertical antennas built up on the beach. So if anyone would like to look that up, it's on YouTube, and it's Victor Kilo 3 Yankee Echo.
Thank you, Mike. Yeah, Peter Parker does amazingly well operating QRP, doesn't he? Just sensational results he has. And I mean, there are some very, very famous QRPers from New Zealand. I was talking to one recently who's so famous, forgotten his call sign, but he was making the point to me recently that he's only worked twice QRP from his home location from ZL to G in the whole time he's been operating over 30 odd years. And, you know, he's not near the sea. He doesn't have a fantastic location. He's only got a very limited space to put an antenna up. But, you know, lots of us have that as well. But, you know, working DX, operating QRP is definitely, you know, as Ken said earlier, you know, there are kind of 3 things that come together, don't they? And Phil, you made the same point. 3 things that come together with antennas. Number one is, what sort of antenna is it? Is it the right one for what you are trying to do? Number one. Number 2, what is your location? So going back to our lovely people on TV, Kirsty and Phil, in their location program, it's the same for antennas. But those 2 things are absolutely critical. But the third one, if we don't have HF propagation or VHF propagation, you ain't going to work anyone. So, you know, those 3 things have all got to come together. And when they do come together, that's when, as Mike knows and other people know, and Peter Parker knows, you can make those amazing 10,000 mile QSOs using 5 watts and a simple vertical antenna.
Yeah. When was it? About 18 months ago, I was down in Portugal and I had all the radio kit with me. I was on a campsite to which all the interest starts, and I'm getting the questions asked, you know, what does it do? Why do it? And all the rest of it. You know, I can go on anything and talk on my phone. Why do I need to do that? So I said, well, I really set myself a bit of a task here. I said, well, you know, we're right by the sea here. I said, tomorrow morning, I'll be on 20 meters and I'll be talking to Australians. You know, okay. So sure enough, I was up that following morning, put the radio on, and I worked, I think 1, 2, 3 VKs anyway, on 20-meter phone, to which everyone was amazed. They said, well, are those people in Australia? Yeah. And that was 10 watts to a vertical, near the sea, 20-meter long path. It works. And I thought, that's a good demonstration I got away with. But yeah, it did actually cause quite a few bits of conversation about that. How the hell can you talk to Australia direct on a piece of wire and a little tiny radio? But you can do it. It can be done. But the conditions have got to be right. The timing's got to be right. The bands have got to be good. And the antennas most certainly got to be right.
Yep. Yeah, all that is true. And Kevin, MW0CPA, who's on YouTube, has just come into the chat saying there is no better enjoyment than working QRP and getting long distance from home or by location.
Yep.
Quite right, Kevin. We're all with you on that one.
Yeah.
One thing, can I just go back to the soil conductivity thing and water conductivity? I put the figures in the chat, Ken, for conductivity of seawater and fresh water, as in, well, tap water, strictly speaking. We all know that it's to do with the salts that are dissolved in the water, the conductivity. But I wonder, it obviously varies throughout the country. I have wondered, I've said this before to you, I wonder what it's like on the peat above the hills above us, what the conductivity is like, because it is very contaminated, but it could be the opposite. You know, we're in a soft water area in Yorkshire, and a lot of other countries in a hard water area. It's full of calcium, but
yeah, we are.
Yeah, exactly. So your cup of tea will not be the same as ours, I can assure.
Oh dear me! You know, we can fill a kettle full of chalk in about 2 boilings.
I don't know how that affects the conductivity dramatically, or does it not vary that much? I don't know how it compares. It's not going to be as good as salt water, I appreciate, but I wonder how much better it is than tap water.
I don't know, but I would imagine that if you went up onto the top of the Pennines, where all the peat bogs are, it's very acidic. And I don't know whether that would work.
Well,
I've not
to do with its
tried it.
acidity. It's to do with its salt content. The magnesium, calcium,
you name it. Yeah,
all the other salts that are dissolved. I don't know how it compares. To be honest, I'd be interested. If anybody knows.
Unless we've got someone who's a chemist, or well, I say chemist, who studied chemistry, who could tell us about conductivity in acidic type.
Yeah, I know that they do. That the guys who do ground penetrating radar and all these not what's the word when they archaeology. You can look at this. They look at conductivity as one of the measurements. They go across the ground measuring conductivity, looking for anomalies, and you can do magnetic anomalies, conductivity, etc. That's the same kind of thing. I just wondered whether the peat is better and it's whether or worse. I don't know whether it's better or worse. I don't know.
It's down to the resistance, isn't it? It's down to the resistance. I mean, like with copper sheeting, you've got hardly, if any, resistivity. I think that's the right word. It's almost perfect.
Yeah, could I
Pardon?
A quick
point.
Go
ahead.
Go, Gerald. On the thing we were talking about distilled water with the school kids when I was teaching it. That distilled water was almost an insulator, and we used to put acid in it to acidulate it to make it a conductive one. So the acid should make it conductive as well as salts. What do you, Ken?
Yeah, well, I think acid and alkaline have a similar effect on water of making it conductive, doesn't it? So it could be, Ken, that the difference between the peat water on the hills up here and Phil's chalk water on the downs is minimal in terms of the difference it makes.
Yeah. Can I just in contribution? I've studied quite a lot of chemistry in my time.
You got one? You got a chemist?
Well, I'm not a chemist. I was a microbiologist and latterly a satellite TV installer, but I've studied quite a lot of chemistry. Absolutely pure water, distilled water, is ever so slightly ionized, so it's not quite a perfect insulator. As soon as you add anything which is ionized like salt, then its conductivity goes up massively. From what I remember, the concentration of salt in seawater is 3.5%. If you dip your finger into it and take a taste, it tastes very, very strongly of salt. Now, if you're up on...
Not down in the south, we don't do that. There's too much bad stuff gets floating in the water.
Well, yes, you've got to take that into account. I would think if you stuck your finger into some wet peat and put it on in your mouth, you wouldn't get very much of a taste. I would think, I'm not certain on this, but I would think that the concentration of dissolved ionic materials in in peat is a lot lower. So I would, this is just my supposition, that to operate in peat would be nothing like as effective as operating near to the sea. That's what I think. I'm not certain about it, but that's what I think.
So what you're saying, Phil, is we need to be down the sewage works where there's a lot of contamination rather than up on
No,
no, that wouldn't work because it's not ionized, you see. That's organic material, so it doesn't conduct.
Right.
You need something which is ionized, which is sodium chloride.
I'm not going paddling anywhere in the English Channel at the moment, I can tell you.
Yeah.
Right. Anyone else got a question or comment they want to make on this wonderful, never-ending subject of antennas? Anyone who hasn't spoken yet want to just tip into it?
Well, I'll just end up with, I'm going to build that thing then. From what you said, I'm going to build my little prototype, build a coil, and try it out. And this summer we'll give it a go in the field, and we'll see how it goes. And whether I build Mark II, Mark III, or Mark IV, it'll make use of the pole, and we'll give it a go. That's what I'm going to do. Thank you.
Roger,
can I just say something?
Yes, go on, Richard. Yeah.
If you at work, we used to have a UK Earth resistivity map. Yeah. I don't know what's happened to it because the building's demolished now. But if you look on Google and just put UK Earth resistivity, you'll be able to download a PDF of the Earth resistivity right across the UK. So have a look at that. And the other thing is, I don't know if there's a map anywhere that tells you how far seawater actually goes up an estuary, because you get a lot of inlets, small inlets that are tidal. So at high tide they fill up, and surely if you want to be near the sea, you don't have to be right on the shore.
Yeah, the water, the tide here. It's the one thing it catches the people out around this way are the paddle boarders. Paddle boarders come down here and launch, and then realise they've got 3 or 4 knots of current going the wrong way up the river, which really catches them out because they're solely intent on going down to the coast, and suddenly they've got this water flowing the wrong way for them to paddleboard down the river, because rivers only go to the sea.
Yeah,
well, they do, except if you're around here, because the tide rises and falls in the river here probably 2 meters. It goes right down to about ½ a meter deep, and then obviously when there's not a lot of flood water, and then it goes right back up again. But it's very salty. I mean, we get saltwater fish right up the river up here.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, Ken.
Mm-hmm.
When you hear of the Amazon having a 3-mile outlet into the sea, I bet you won't get a good earth there, would you? Because apparently the fresh water from the Amazon, it extends 3 miles out, from what I've read.
Well, I'll tell you what I did. When I went to the Humber Bridge on the River Humber, bearing in mind I'm about 5 miles in from the sea at that point, and I came across a guy who was in charge of the little inlets and looking after them, and the boat company that was next door. And he came over to see what I was doing. And I said to him, I said, I don't know how much of this water, almost directly at the side of the Humber Bridge, is salt water. I said, because obviously you've got quite a few inland rivers that are running into the River Humber or eventually find their way in. And he said to me, he said, when the tide is coming in, you will be surprised how salty the water is. He said, but as soon as the tide's going out, he said it's pulling the fresh water down with it. And that is why when I go to the Humber, and bearing in mind I'm only about 20 feet, when I put the trolley by, I've got a picture on here I could share, and I'm only 20 foot from the water's edge, but it's a waste of time going when the tide's going out. I have to go there in drier, warmer weather when the tide's coming in, and it pulls the salt water in, similar to what Phil said earlier.
Yeah, yeah.
And Ken's problem then, of course, is the other calculation. If you want to work DX, is where you are in relation to the grey line.
Yeah.
And so, so what you want when you go down the Humber is to have a coming together of three things really. One, that it's at a reasonable time of the day, not 4 o'clock in the morning, but also that it's you've got those two things together. You've got the tide coming in and rising up, and you've got that kind of hour window of the grey line on the band on which you're looking to work the DX.
And I choose whether to go on the north side of the River Humber or the south side, depending on where propagation is. So if I want to work over to Whiskey 7, Victor Echo 7, go on the south side of the River Humber late in the day when we've got propagation out that way. If I want to work over towards South Indian Ocean, Malaysia, that area, go on the north side of the River Humber at the right time of the day. And again, you really need to start looking at VOA predictions for DX, and then you start getting deeper into it.
Well, next time I come up to see our friends in Hummonby, when I come back over the Humber Bridge, I'll have to take a detour down and play on your bit of seafront up there.
Well, the good thing I've got, and it is good this. At first, I had a problem when I went onto the salt lagoons. The Guardia Civil, the police, came and checked me out and almost threatened to confiscate the equipment. However, within 3 hours, they'd been told by the director of the equivalent to Ofcom, which in Spain is the URE, who had by then already contacted the Alicante Telecom and the Guardia Civil in Elche and told them, leave him alone. We are sending him, you and Alicante Telecom emails to allow him to operate in the salt lagoons. I could not believe it. I carry that now. That is like, to me, that is just government permission to work in the salt lagoons. I was just going to mention this, Nick. We've spoke a lot about salt water. We've spoke a lot about how it is so good. But what about when we are well inland? And this is changing it totally now, because we're not literally looking at vertical polarization. We're looking at all different types of antennas. I don't know if anybody wants to discuss any of them. Dipoles, loop antennas, inverted Vs, slopers, 49-to-1s, 4-to-1s, end-fed half waves. But these are all antennas that really are not effective by the sea, but they are almost what we are having to put up as a necessity at our home locations in postage stamp sized gardens.
You didn't mention slopers either, Ken. I was a sloper at my point south.
Yeah, it's on my list. Sloper, there, look.
Oh, good. I take it away. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, there's a lot to be said. I'll pass it to Phil in a minute because I think Phil will have a lot to say about these. Sloper antennas. Again, it's what do you want to work? I mean, I've just been experimenting with a very low dipole at 21 feet. So it's not even as high as the house, but runs by the side of the house with a reflector wire underneath it, spaced 14 feet below, almost touching the grass,
so it goes
to give
up.
me a bit of gain. Yeah, but it's all NVIS, near vertical incidence skywave propagation. So if you want to just work into G and continentals, it is absolutely, I'll guarantee you, 59 plus 40 signals. But that's a simple, cheap antenna, almost perfect 50 ohm SWR. You'll have a 1-to-1 SWR. If it creeps up, it'll go no higher than 1.3 to 1. You could put a sloper up. You could put inverted V with open wire feeder, dipoles with open wire feeder, loop antennas. The bigger the loop, the better it is because it'll work on other bands with open wire feeder. I don't know what you think to this, Phil, but I'm just throwing that in because
well, I can.
We're not near the sea. That's why I'm saying it.
But I can throw several questions into that one. The open wire feeder is great. And unfortunately, a lot of people go and put a magic bit of grey ferrite on the end of it, which is going to amazingly transform that impedance into something that the wireless set works with. But of course, what everyone forgets is ferrite has got a frequency range. And whereas you wind a 4-to-1 or whatever you want to wind, a 49-to-1 for a given range of frequencies, it's not the same ferrite you use if you want an end-fed half wave for 80 meters as what you do for 10 meters, because the ferrite for one will not work on the other. It will not work very efficiently. Correct, but the other thing is we've all forgotten the past. I mean, Ken's going to remember, and I remember, is in days of old when wire feeders were used, we had things like KW, who made matching devices which were balanced. And it was nothing unusual for people to build link-coupled antenna tuning units and buy KW antenna tuning units. And there still is today, and I have one here, a MFJ fully link-coupled balanced antenna tuner. There's only one, and that is absolutely superb. It's a brilliant piece of kit. It's a proper link-coupled device. It matches. There's the choke chart. Yeah, that one. Oh boy, does that show the difference between good and bad. Yeah, don't go putting, there we go, 61 ferrite, 52 ferrite, 43 ferrite, and 31 ferrite. Completely different range of frequencies it works over. And you must have spent some time working that lot out. Yeah, it makes a big difference. But that antenna tuner is wonderful, the MFJ one, because it really does work on, you can put up a doublet in the old sense. And one I use for if I've got somewhere to hang something up high. Still, one antenna I've got as the portable one is a double extended ZEP on 20 meters, which is about 85 feet long and fed with twin line. Brilliant antenna, 0.64 of a wavelength on each leg on 20 meters. It's got 3 dB gain, 4 lobes on 20, and easy to tune with a proper link coupled ATU, but not so easy when you go and putting ferrites and putting it into an unbalanced device. So it's, in my arsenal of antenna equipment, I have both an old Johnson Junior Matchbox, which is a link coupled tuner, and I've also got the MFJ, but both work brilliantly on tuned stuff. Just one of the many things I carry around me when I go out playing.
Kevin on YouTube has just asked a question to both of you, arising from what you said, Ken, about the MVIS antenna. Is there a set distance underneath the dipole?
Well, there is a spacing for whatever band you want to work.
Yeah,
I
because
can't remember. Is it 0.12 or 0.12 of a wavelength?
Yeah, basically, it's the same as the old thing. If you had a dipole, especially if you have like a folded dipole, complete folded dipole, and you put a director 0.1 of a wavelength underneath, the 300 ohm feed impedance goes down. So if that distance behind, and of course, effectively the director underneath needs to be longer than the driven element of which it's working with.
Yeah, so Kevin's looking at 40 meters, Ken.
40 meters, I would say 21 foot high, 14 foot below it, put your reflector. I can't say exactly. I know it's about 0.1. No, it's 0.12 of a wavelength. And I think, it equates to about 14 feet. I haven't got my calculator to work it out, but it's, I would say 14 feet, whatever that is in meters.
Yeah.
So a couple of wooden stakes to hold the dipole as horizontal as you can, the one that's near the ground. It's totally non-connected to the driven dipole above it.
One above the other, yeah.
About 5% into the extra length you need.
Yeah.
Yes, slightly longer. Yeah, if you want to really be smart, and I haven't got one of these, I don't know whether Phil has, but I haven't got a field strength meter to go and check. You got one?
I've got the original Marconi one.
Okay. Well, you could even take measurements without the reflector, and then if you've got enough time in the day, put the reflector wire underneath and go and do the same measurements. All I can say is that my experiments recently, I did work into the States. I worked 2 stations. I only had it up about a month, but it was just phenomenally good into G and so quiet there was no noise level. Having said that, I've almost got the same with my quarter wave vertical antenna. And how I've done it, I'll never know, but I have. I've done it with, and that is with 13 kilovolts power lines within 30 foot of the vertical. So yeah, and of course the vertical is guide, so it never falls anywhere near those wires. But yeah, you've just got to experiment, and experiment with radials on the ground if you want.
Yeah,
I have done both.
Yeah, my radials on the ground are no more than 6 inches apart. And there's about between 50 and 100 of them underneath that 40 meter vertical. That's why it works. Yeah.
Yeah, I have read somewhere, I can't remember where, that if you're going to put elevated radials on a quarter wave, you don't really need more than 6.
That's right. Yeah.
4's okay. I've got 4, and just fan them around in different directions. I really wish I could get my 40 meter vertical higher off the ground. I'm using a spider, equivalent to a spider pole at 12 meters. And I probably could take it up another meter, but to be honest with you, I'm not bothered about the hassle. I am a DXer, and I went on last night and worked VK5KI and VK4XS on 40, and I can't beat that unless by a miracle a Pacific station comes on, but I'm happy with that. So, you know, to me, it's just making best use of what you can.
Can I make a comment about that? It's but by absolute coincidence, I have a 12-meter spider beam pole, and essentially I converted a DX Commander. I managed to break 3 of those. I used to go portable on top of the Chilterns, and a few years back when we had some horrendous storms, I managed in total to have 3 of them broken. So I got the 12-meter pole, which is a much stronger thing, the one that's made by Spider Beam. And I have that in my back garden now. I've moved house, and I have that in the back garden. I've got it strung for 40, 30, 20, and 17. It's a fairly small garden. I've got 16 radials, and they are 5 meters each one. Now, just those figures are I suggest, are going to be quite scary to some people. I mean, they're not long enough, and there's not enough of them. Here's the coincidence. 7 o'clock this morning, I worked ZL3 on 40 meters CW. And last week on 40, albeit FT8, Nauru and Mariana Islands. And that's a really compromised antenna. It hasn't got all the right radials it should have. And I think there's a danger of, well, not a danger. I think it's a fact. You get into diminishing returns trying to improve on antennas. And yeah, sometimes just for peace of mind, I think you have to say it's good enough. And I think I've reached that point in my life. I've built so many antennas. It's good enough what I've got now. And just one more point there. A very famous DXer once said to me, all antennas work. It's just some work better than others.
Yeah.
And I think it's very, very true and worth hanging on to.
Yeah, who's the DXer, Chris, who decided to stick a light bulb in the garden and feed coax and operate in a contest on it? And he managed to work about 100 stations from the light bulb in the back garden.
I don't know who he was, but I like him.
Yeah, it's one of those moments where your neighbour's going, "What on earth's he doing now?" when the light bulb's flashing on and off in the back garden.
We don't like things flashing in the back garden.
I've got an antenna.
There you go, Roger. That's it.
That's it. That's my new antenna.
Problem solved. We used to use those for tuning up the antennas in the valve days, Roger. Yeah. Of course, you can't do that with these LED ones nowadays, but the original old-fashioned incandescent bulbs you could use. Anyway, has anyone else got anything to say, or are we going to? Am I just going to give Phil and Ken an opportunity to give their last words and sum it all up? So, one last chance, everybody.
I have a supply.
High power light bulbs.
Well, can I just, could I share screen here, Nick, and just for my final point, just show an antenna which I found on the internet, which is very simple. I hope I can do this and it works, but I'm going to put this antenna on now, and I'm going to share screen and then come up with this antenna and see if, right, that is it. Can you see it?
No, Ken, you don't see
Not
that.
yet.
Not yet, Ken.
You're not seeing it yet. Well, it's the DX ground plane antenna. I'm just going to try once more to share. See if it shares. I don't know if I'm sharing screen. I'm going to try and get it up now. And right, has that brought it up?
No.
No,
Ken, we don't see that.
In that case, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy it and I'm going to put it on the Denby Dale. It's basically a DX ground plane antenna. I'll put it on the chat, and I'm copied it and pasted it on there, and it's for 5 bands, and it's basically just one antenna that has 5 wires, a bit like the DX Commander, but as going up slightly at an angle. And it goes no higher than 17 feet. And I think you'll find it's quite fascinating to look at and read it, and it shows the pictures of it as well. There it is. I've just sent it on the chat, so that's for anyone to have a look at. The simplest antenna other than a dipole.
Yeah, it's just 20 through 10 verticals. That's all.
That's it. That's it.
Yeah. And of course, if you look at the stepper, which is the one with the movable elements, they actually make a vertical, which is nothing more than a wire or a tape, and it's got a motor on it, and it just literally goes up or down.
Yes, well, there is a copy of that design by MM0OPX.
Yeah. And that, when you consider that design was being used 30, 40 plus years ago inside a fiberglass tube, and one of the manufacturers was Highgain, and they used to be used as covert embassy antennas, because they sat in a fiberglass tube that looked like a flagpole. And the idea was to put them in places around the world where you could have an HF vertical going up and down and tuning inside the pole. And it was a piece of rope and a pulley and a long tape, and it just pulled up and down. Yeah, same principle as that. Yeah.
That's the one. Yeah. Yeah, that's the one. I know Colin, who's designed this antenna. And I know at least one of the members of Demmydale that's got this antenna, and all I can say is it works tremendously well. Dare I say, he has massive pile-ups by the sea, but he operates from his garden with one radial about a metre above ground, and he still has good results.
Yeah, that goes back as well, doesn't it, to Chris's point, and I would particularly say to everyone here that it's all about trying things and see what works. And, if you're having success with something, even if you don't have, 100 radials. I mean, when my wire antenna in my garden that you saw when I was over in Penistone on that old steelworks location was literally, I started with a 20-metre wire up the tree, and then I added 15 metres and 10 metres, and I did 12 and 17, fed at the bottom, radials in the ground, all that ironworks in the soil underneath me, and fed it. And I had fantastic results from it. And, there was nothing that, as Chris was kind of saying, if you want to be purist about it, this was not correct and wasn't going to work. But of course it did. And people do things. Now, obviously, the point is, and that you said that, Phil, or Ken said that, it is about diminishing returns, isn't it? You can spend, Chris, you made that point, you can spend a lot of time getting it to be right and getting it to be perfect, but you don't really notice the difference in day-to-day operation. So you kind of wonder to yourself, really, do I want to spend all that time doing that? I might have a bit more fun just operating the radio than fiddling around with adding the 55 radials to it. It's horses for courses, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, that's what makes the hobby great fun. No different. I mean, people compare us to people fishing, don't they? I mean, we are fishing for radio waves in the ether, and that's what we're doing. And you go around any lake, any bit of sea, and talk to people fishing, and they'll all give you different theories about which are the best ways to catch the fish with the right bait and at the right time of day and all the rest of it. You could be listening to a radio amateur. But should we draw this to an end and give Phil and Ken just an opportunity to kind of sum up? So who wants to go first out of you two guys to kind of conclude tonight's entertaining chat?
Well, I'll go then.
Yeah.
I'll sum it up by saying keep things simple. Look at what ground you've got to use. Look at your neighbours. Think about your neighbours. Think about other influences, whether it's children, animals. All these things come into the equation before you decide to put up an antenna that's permanent. Unless you're going to put something up where it's just going to be up for a short period of time, and experiment and read the internet, because everything that's in these books behind me is on the internet. Over to you, Phil.
Yeah, the days of buying antenna books before the internet. My collection is, to say the least, considerable. I've got antenna books on shelves, I've got hundreds, all sorts of things, but before we could easily search articles and find things. Yeah, now you can just look them up. But yeah, it is a case of trying things. I mean, you get an idea and try it out, but most things have been tried. The only thing that takes a bit of forethought, which, I mean, when you're going out from operating portable from home, basically you can chuck all sorts of stuff in the back of the car and try it out. But if you're actually doing an away trip, which is on a flight somewhere, you do need to try things before you go. The amount of times I speak to people and I say, oh, I took this out to Spain, Portugal, Turkey, wherever. When I got there, it didn't work very well. Did you try it before you went? Well, no, I just assumed it was going to work. I mean, just don't do that. It's so easy to try it. Try it all first, prove it all works, take it with you. You have a great holiday with your radio.
Brilliant. Thank you, Phil. Ken, last words?
I think we've covered it. Yeah. Back to you, Phil. Back to you, Nick.
All right. Well, look, lovely. Well, first of all, a very, very big thanks to Phil and to Ken for their time tonight and their observations and ideas there. And I do think, unless people shout me down here tonight, but I think we should probably run a similar event like this later on in the year as well. Let's come and revisit this. I don't think we can, personally, I don't think you can talk about antennas enough, really. And I don't think you can experiment enough with antennas. And we'll also have the benefit of having a play as well with those 5.6 metre telescopic poles up at Farnley Tyres. And I can't wait to have a play with the Delta Loop and seeing whether the pole survives even a lightweight wire on it in the winds up at Farnley. You know, we're 1,000 feet above sea level there. So it's a pretty good location, but also it can be very windy. So we'll go and see what works and what doesn't work. And I'd just like to make an observation to Phil. You know, I fell foul of that recently, Phil. In last September, we went out to one of the Greek islands for a holiday, short holiday, and I was delighted to read that we had a balcony in the hotel. The hotel was next to the sea, and I thought I can operate radio here. But in the end, I made a decision to take with me a loop antenna, but one that I use here hanging from something. And I thought, if I've got a balcony, it'll have a roof over the top of it, and I can just and I can hang the loop from the top of the cord. And of course, there was nothing like that. It was completely open balcony, and the only place I could hang the loop from was off a screw in the middle of the doors, the opening doors that open out onto the balcony. But then the problem with that was we had all the concrete of this modern hotel and the concrete that was along the sides of the balcony, and it was just absolutely hopeless. And I was really, really disappointed. I mean, not that I would have, I don't know about you, Phil, but, you know, not that I'd have spent hours doing it on a you know, we were on a Greek summer holiday by ourselves. We'd left the kids and grandkids behind. We'd spent the summer with the kids and the grandkids, and this was our time for a break. I wouldn't have been on for a long time, but it was just impossible. And I kind of thought, I've got to rethink this and think about something that I can use that's simple to do. And it's about, when, as you say, when you're going abroad, you're flying on a plane, you've got to think, what can I take with me on that aeroplane? Have I got hold luggage or hand luggage, and what's going to go and what's not going to go? And you had to factor all those things in as well. But it's all about preparation, and it's all about trying and see what happens. Ken will know in the summer holidays, I'll end on this note, because I was staying in southwest France in the Dordogne on a campsite surrounded by trees. I had my 12-meter spider pole. I had hanging from it a 10-meter vertical dipole for 20 meters. And Ken was in QSO with the VK net in Australia. And I called in, and Ken helped me just to get heard above the callers in there. And they called me in, and I then worked 7 or 8, however many it was, VKs that morning, running 50 watts to this dipole in a very, very unfavorable location, other than that I was in an open field with this pole. But that just showed me that something very simple, like a vertical dipole up a single pole, no radials, no bits of wire everywhere, just one pole and this wire up it, that can work as well as anything. So it kind of taught me a lesson. Sometimes we overcomplicate things, don't we? We can do that at home. We can overthink things, and sometimes go back to doing something very simple is perhaps the answer, which I guess is why many people are using end-fed half waves. And I know Mike and Adriana in Germany, who have got a very small garden in your QTH there, haven't you? Make use of end-fed half waves a lot at home, visibly very, very unnoticeable to your neighbours, not taking up any space, but they do work, and you're able to make QSOs. And I think that's the message from tonight's meeting. You know, what we're trying to do is encourage people to get out on their radios, and you can operate from anywhere pretty well, and you can make QSOs, you can have some fun. So thank you, Phil. Thank you, Ken. We'll definitely get you two back. And next time, I know we'll be joined by Rick at DJ0IP, because Rick dropped me a note. He was hoping to join us tonight as well, but he had to go into hospital for a planned operation, and he's having a bit of recuperation afterwards. I know he keeps contributing to the Balance group on Facebook, so he's back with us and still interested in radio, but he didn't think he was going to be up to or able to take part in tonight's roundtable. But probably next time we'll be joined by Rick, who will add another dimension to our discussions. So thank you, everybody, and thank you to our watchers on YouTube. Still got people watching it now. Thank you very much for sticking with us and for joining in the chat, and a very good night to you as well. So I'll say good night to YouTube, and I will hit the record button as well. End record. So thank you, everyone. Good night, and we'll keep the room open as we do.